and I made it more like theater. And then just to cross-cut with archive images from the most public outpost of propaganda, which was the national television, from exactly the same moments where the story of this kid took place, so to speak.
But I mean, these are two forms of making political cinema. That is the form of the restaging of, and I understand that what they speak, their dialogues are from the archive. No?
Yes, completely from the secret police documents, and as I said before, it is, and unfortunately not all of it is translatable, of course, but most of it I think it is. It's also a film about language and how language frames situations like that, and how one type of language can be found in another. I mean, how this secret language of the secret police can be found also in the public and vice versa, so to speak.
And what did you ask then your actors to, because they speak this language? So is it a very, I mean, it's everywhere used, this term Brechtian approach, or is it for you more to find something in these words?
Well, I think it's even less than Brechtian. It would be too highbrow to call it Brechtian. I think I needed the actors and I wanted them just to be like holograms of the documents. It's not, I always told them, because they are incorporating written texts, and of course they represent also the possible characters who wrote those texts or who lived those stories, but I wanted for the audience to be very obvious that it's documents that speak through their words. It's the words themselves more important than the actors. It's not a good acting film, so to speak.
Yeah, but then you use montage to... So that is a completely new element. So at what point did you decide to put that in the film like that?
Well, I think that's an interesting question, and I think something very important for me as a, let's say, an epistemological approach. The fact that montage is a tool, meaning by that not only editing in order to create a story, that you put 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 images together and that creates a story, but montage, it was understood and somehow used, let's say, in the artistic and intellectual development in the last century, somehow a little bit more parallel to the cinema development. I mean, it started with Eisenstein, it started with Walter Benjamin, it started with André Malraux, it started with Godard, of course, or with Dusan Makaveyev, and all until today, I don't know, the novels of Sebald are using these techniques, meaning by that by putting together 2 sets of images or 2 sets of text or whatever is that to make these elements clash, you get new meanings. And of course that's something very contemporary, because whenever we are zapping on a TV or scrolling on a Facebook page, you get this kind of montage, and I'm not even sure and it's also used in all the memes on the internet or on all the jokes on the internet, but I still think that it's somehow epistemologically important or artistically important, although it's hard to and it's very dangerous to use it. I mean, what's the significance of the fact that in the same time that this kid was giving this statement at the Securitate, they broadcasted something like a song, like a bad song or a ridiculous song on TV. Is there a meaning into that, into clash these images? I don't know. I just felt this need to investigate a little bit this idea of montage and this thing, as an epistemological approach, as I said.
Can you talk a bit in that regard about your interest in archives? Because I find that is something that goes very deep within your work.
Well, it's some part of my work, because I'm like a Renaissance man. I'm able to do different things. No, I'm joking, of course. it is true that actually I don't see. I think Godard gave the best answer here when he was asked why he used so many quotes, and that don't belong to him, is not his text, and he said, but I'm filming people who are not made by me. I'm filming objects which are not made by me. I'm filming trees which are not created by me. Why not filming quotes? And it's the same here. I think there's some traces, some remains of history of the past that gets somehow, these traces have this form of sometimes objects, sometimes documents, words, sometimes images, sometimes photographs. And it's the only way that you can make an image of the past. This is what historians do. But actually, and this is one of my problems with historians, and I have friends historians, and I work with them, and I always had, for my films regarding the history of Romania, I always had consultants in history, and they are never using images. They're not interested in images, mostly, apart from one historian, with him I also work for a film. And I think it's because it's not only the ontological nature of image which makes it more hazy, more difficult to frame, but also it comes from, and especially in the digital world, the ontological aspect of image is even more difficult to define. But it's also because they are not trained. They are not trained in, I don't know, history school or whatever. They don't try to use images or to believe in images. If you buy a history book, usually maybe they have 2 or 3 photographs in it, and that's it. And I was very shocked to see that historians of not only communism but also the fascist past of Romania never went to the film archive, never went to photography archive. And I believe that if history is what Johan Huizinga, the great Dutch historian, says it is, like the way a civilization recounts about its own past, that's a very broad definition, of course. I really believe that to make a film about the past in this way, it's part of history, and I want to be considered a historian, but nobody.